Before we begin, take a moment to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications, because stories like this one don't just inform, they change the way we see people we thought we already understood. For years, Elin Nordegren was reduced to a headline, a reaction image, a symbol of public heartbreak. The world thought it knew her story from a distance, framed by scandal and spectacle. But what most people never realized is that while the cameras moved on, her real transformation was only just beginning. This is not a story about revenge, fame, or survival through wealth alone. It's about quiet resilience, about rebuilding from emotional collapse without asking for applause. Elin didn't disappear after her life exploded in front of the world. She stepped away, deliberately, and began reshaping everything on her own terms. And where she ended up is far more powerful than anyone expected. Paragraph 2. Early life and values. Long before the world learned her name, Elin Nordegren lived a life defined by structure, privacy, and independence. Born on January 1, 1980 in Stockholm, Sweden, she grew up in a household that valued discipline over attention and strength over validation. Her parents, Thomas and Barbro Nordegren, were intentional in how they raised their children, especially Elin and her identical twin sister, Josephine. Rather than encouraging comparison, they made a conscious effort to treat the girls as individuals. Different clothes, different academic paths, different expectations. This approach planted a seed that would later become central to Elin's survival, self-definition. When her parents divorced while she was still young, the experience didn't harden her. Instead, it taught her something critical, that staying in a broken relationship could be more damaging than leaving one. That lesson would echo through her life, decades later. Paragraph 3. Youth, work, and education dreams. As a teenager, Elin wasn't chasing glamour or recognition. She worked modest jobs, saved carefully, and focused on building a future grounded in stability rather than status. Even when she briefly appeared on the cover of a Swedish magazine in her early 20s, she never saw modeling as an identity. To her, it was a temporary means to an end, a way to fund her education. Her real ambition was studying psychology. She was deeply interested in understanding emotional pain, behavior, and the invisible forces that shape people's lives. Ironically, this curiosity would later become deeply personal. At the time, she had no idea how much trauma she would one day have to process herself. Fame was not part of the plan. Attention was not the goal. She wanted a quiet, meaningful life built on understanding, not visibility. Paragraph 4. Moving to the U.S. An unexpected turn. In 2001, Elin made a decision that changed everything, though she couldn't have known it at the time. She accepted a nanny position with a family of Swedish golfer Jesper Parnevik, which brought her to the United States. It was meant to be temporary, a pause in her education, not a new identity. The environment was structured, calm, and familiar enough to feel safe. It was there, in that ordinary setting, that she was introduced to Tiger Woods. At that moment, he was already one of the most famous athletes on the planet. To Elin, he was simply someone passing through her orbit. She had no interest in celebrity culture and no desire to be absorbed into a world built on constant attention. Yet that single introduction quietly set the stage for a life-altering chapter she never anticipated. Paragraph 5. Reluctant romance. When Tiger began pursuing Elin in 2002, her hesitation wasn't performative, it was genuine. She had a boyfriend back in Sweden, academic goals, and a clear sense of self she wasn't willing to surrender. Fame didn't impress her. In fact, it made her cautious. She turned him down multiple times before agreeing to a simple, private date. What eventually drew her in wasn't his status, but his ability, at least initially, to feel normal in quiet moments. For over a year, they kept their relationship almost entirely out of public view. No red carpets, no announcements, no spectacle. But once the relationship became public in 2003, everything changed. Elin was no longer seen as herself. She became an extension of Tiger Woods' image, whether she wanted that role or not. Paragraph 6. Marriage and public perfection. Their wedding in 2004 was portrayed as a modern fairy tale, exclusive, elegant, and tightly controlled. But behind the scenes, Elin was still adjusting to a life she had never sought. She worked hard to preserve normalcy, designing their home with Scandinavian simplicity and shielding their private moments from unnecessary exposure. When their daughter Sam was born in 2007, followed by their son Charlie in 2009, Elin believed she had finally achieved the life she'd always envisioned: a stable home, grounded children, and a sense of peace. She supported Tiger through injuries, surgeries, and relentless public pressure, all while avoiding the spotlight herself. To the world, they looked perfect. But perfection can hide fractures, and those fractures were growing. Paragraph 7. Cracks beneath the surface. What outsiders didn't see was the emotional distance slowly forming behind closed doors. It wasn't sudden. It wasn't explosive. It was subtle: missed connections, growing silences, and a feeling that something was slipping away. Elin tried to hold the family together, believing stability could be preserved through effort and patience. But sometimes, commitment alone isn't enough. By late 2009, the tension reached a breaking point. What happened next didn't just end a marriage, it dismantled an entire reality Elin had trusted. Paragraph 8. The night everything collapsed. On Thanksgiving night in 2009, Elin discovered undeniable proof of Tiger's infidelity. A message, a realization, a confrontation that shattered her sense of reality. Hours later, Tiger fled their home and crashed his vehicle nearby, triggering a media storm that turned private devastation into global spectacle. Rumors spiraled wildly, painting Elin as unstable and violent. The truth was far more painful and far less sensational. She was a woman trying to process betrayal while her life unraveled in real time. In the days that followed, revelations multiplied. The scale of deception was overwhelming. Trust didn't crack, it collapsed entirely. Paragraph 9. Emotional fallout in therapy. As more details emerged, Elin faced not just betrayal but humiliation. The realization that others had known, that the truth had been hidden in plain sight, was devastating. She questioned her own instincts, her memories, her judgment. Therapy became a lifeline, but healing was slow and uneven. For months, she tried to salvage the marriage, believing that effort and accountability might repair what had been broken. But some wounds go too deep. By mid-2010, Elin understood that staying would mean sacrificing her own emotional survival. Paragraph 10. Divorce and quiet strength. When Elin filed for divorce, she did so away from cameras and headlines. The legal process was brief but emotionally profound. While the settlement drew public attention, money was never her focus. Her priority was protecting her children and creating stability. In her rare public statements, she spoke honestly, not with bitterness but with clarity. She acknowledged her pain, her shock, and the hard truth that love cannot exist without trust. She didn't seek sympathy. She sought closure. Instead of retreating into isolation or luxury, Elin made an unexpected choice. She returned to school. Quietly enrolling at Rollins College, she pursued psychology, one class at a time, while raising her children. Learning became her anchor. Education gave her language for her pain and structure for her healing. Years later, she graduated with near-perfect academic honors and delivered a commencement speech that reflected humility, humor, and resilience. It was a powerful reminder that reinvention doesn't require permission. Elin's rebuilding wasn't symbolic alone. It was physical, deliberate, and uncompromising. In 2011, she purchased an oceanfront mansion in North Palm Beach for around $12 million. To most people, the home looked like a dream property, something to preserve and admire. But Elin saw something else. The structure had foundational issues, both literal and metaphorical. Instead of renovating or repairing what already existed, she made a decision that stunned observers. She demolished it entirely. There was no nostalgia, no attachment to what once stood there. She chose not to live inside something flawed simply because it appeared beautiful on the surface. From the ground up, she designed a new home, modern, secure, intentional. The process took years, patience, and precision. When she eventually sold the property for nearly $29 million, it wasn't just a financial win. It was proof that she trusted her judgment again. That she could assess risk, make bold decisions, and build lasting value without anyone guiding her hand. The house became a mirror of her inner life, stronger, cleaner, and built to last. While financial independence offered security, Elin was searching for something deeper than comfort. Her years of studying psychology weren't just academic, they were personal. She understood trauma not as a theory, but as a lived experience. In 2018, she quietly took another step forward by becoming a registered mental health counselor intern. Soon after, she founded N Therapy LLC, a small, private practice focused on healing rather than recognition. There were no interviews announcing it, no branding tied to her past. Many of her clients didn't even know her history, and that was intentional. Elin didn't want to be known as someone who survived a scandal. She wanted to be known as someone who listened, understood, and helped others navigate pain without judgment. Her work became an extension of her recovery, a way to transform suffering into service. Instead of letting trauma define her, she used it to create empathy, structure, and meaning. This wasn't reinvention for applause. It was purpose reclaimed. For a long time, Elin had no interest in reopening her heart. Trust had been shattered too publicly, too completely. But life has a way of introducing new chapters when defenses are lowered. In 2017, she met former NFL tight end Jordan Cameron, a man carrying his own scars after retiring early due to repeated concussions. Their connection wasn't loud or rushed. It was quiet, steady, and private. So private, in fact, that the world didn't know they were together for nearly 2 years. When news finally surfaced in 2019, after Elin was seen pregnant, it wasn't scandal that followed, but surprise. She had managed to protect something meaningful in a world that once watched her every move. Together, they built a blended family rooted in stability, not spectacle. Their children grew up without labels like half or step. To them, family was simply family. This time, love wasn't about perfection. It was about safety, respect, and shared responsibility. Today, Elin Nordegren's life stands as a quiet contradiction to everything the public once believed. She didn't retreat into bitterness. She didn't disappear out of weakness. She stepped away to rebuild with intention. She is now a mother to a full household, a professional with purpose, and a woman who controls her narrative through privacy rather than explanation. On rare occasions, the world catches a glimpse, like during the PNC Championship, where she stood beside Tiger Woods, not as a former wife, but as a confident co-parent, grounded and composed. There was no drama in that moment, only maturity. Elin's story isn't about redemption through fame. It's about resilience without an audience. She proves that healing doesn't need validation, that strength doesn't always speak loudly, and that rebuilding a life slowly can be the most powerful victory of all. The woman once defined by betrayal is now defined by choice. And that may be the strongest comeback of all.